Hello and welcome to Unpreachy, a podcast of reflections and homilies by the voices of St. John Chrysostom Parish. Today, Father Brian Zumbrum reflects on Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 to 16, the Gospel for Sunday, September 24th, 2023.
So anyone who has ever worked in education for any length of time knows that in general, young people are fixated on the concept of fairness. Any game that is ever played often devolves into a litany of accusations of who is cheating or not following the rules, despite the fact that the rules are never super clear and change every time the game is played. Or, if you find someone on the losing end of a competition, they are quick to decry the lack of fairness. The nefarious forces that usually look like referees, who their sole job was to crush them and all their youthful dreams in the pursuit of their victory. Or my personal favorite, when any punishment for any offense is given, the inevitable, "that's not fair," and then a generous recounting of every offense of every other classmate or peer in the general vicinity, of which you were not aware but now are fully aware. And the expectation that they shall receive the punishment that was directed to them. But despite being over 20 years of hearing these complaints, I've never once had a student tell me that things were unfair to their advantage. I've never had a student go, "You know, Father Brian, I had an unfair advantage today. You should really rectify that." I've never had a student go, "Excuse me, you missed the corners that I cut." I've never had a student point out to me the times they've cheated, or fudged the rules, or got one over on the system, unless it was in confession and they knew there was nothing I could do about it, or that the statute of limitations was decades past and there was nothing that could be done. Now, I would love to say that all of this is simply part of being a kid, that as we mature into adulthood, we see things differently. I'm not convinced. Because I hear this parable, and honestly, it just sounds like a lot of the political conversations I hear every day around me. Why should they receive government benefits when I'm over here working so hard? It's not fair. Why should someone living without documentation get a path to receive them when they didn't follow the rules? Others are waiting in line. Why shouldn't they? It's not fair. Why should I pay to help someone who's in prison get an education or drug treatment or mental health? I've had to pay for all those things. It is not fair. Again and again we cry, it's not fair. I'm the one following the rules. I'm doing everything right. Why am I not getting ahead the way I deserve? And yet, despite the fact that so often we adults can see the unfairness in the perceived other, I find it a rare soul who's able to speak of the ways life is very unfair, but just to their benefit. The arbitrariness and chance that is such a part of life that most of us somehow manage to always attribute solely to our own gifts and talents and hard work. The advantages that we have that we didn't earn or didn't choose, the accidents of where we're born, the money we inherited, the accidents of the family that we were gifted with, the connections that were forged for us before we left the womb. I can totally picture this scene happening in the gospel because it unfolds every day around us, which is why the landowner's response is so deeply troubling for most of us. Because the landowner is not concerned with perceptions of fairness. He's not concerned what others may think, and he certainly isn't worried about the gossip or grumblings of people about it. He has one concern, and it is the well-being of those individuals entrusted to his care, making sure that each and every one of those laborers had what they needed to succeed and flourish and find happiness. Because in each of his laborers, the landowner was able to see the unique person and the unique story standing before him. A story full of promise and heartbreak, of missed opportunities and success and failure, of joy and pain, of quiet moments and grand adventures. And it doesn't matter whether he learned of that story at the earliest moments of the day or just got to hear in the final hour. The landowner realized that every one of those stories was sacred, worthy of being heard, worthy of being cherished, worthy of being lifted up. My friends, this gospel is not meant to be comfortable. For being a member of the body of Christ rarely is. It is a crucified body that we are a part of, lest we forget on a given day. But, though it is not meant to comfort, it is meant to remind us of the truth of this God we follow, the landowner we work for, which is that we deserve to have access to all we need to flourish, and so does everybody else. And we cannot stop our labor until we get there. So let us get to work together to cultivate these fields entrusted to us. It may not be fair. God is a terrible capitalist, but that's okay, because I follow that God, a God who has promised that we will be enough and we will receive enough to build the kingdom that has been promised. Can't think of much better news than that from our good news this day. May God be praised.
Unpreachy is a production of St. John Chrysostom Parish in Wallingford, Pennsylvania. Visit us at sjcparish.org. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. This podcast was produced by Brendan Lorden with music by Skytoes on Upbeat. Thanks for listening. Be well.